There it is.
Recording in progress.
Thank you, dear. Okay, so welcome to Marine Amateur Radio Club. This is our APRS deep dive series on our advanced topics classes. And we spent the last couple of months playing around with APRS, getting started with it and learning a little bit about it and getting our machines and our radios and our computers and whatnot configured to run it. Some of us have had more luck with that than others. Chilton. And so if you still need help with that, we will probably have some time because this presentation is not super long. But we'll probably have some time at the end of the meeting to work on it a little bit. But let's go ahead and jump right in. So the story so far, we've talked about what APRS is. It's the Automatic Packet Reporting System. And what is APRS's goal? It's to give you a tactical view of what's going on around you within 30 minutes or less. So that's kind of the goal, is for sharing tactical, pertinent information that you might need to know. It does other things as well. We're going to talk about some of those other things. We've got an APRS system. We've either got a radio that has APRS built into it, or we've got a computer, TNC or sound card modem, and a radio that is connected to that so that we can do our APRS. And we've configured our stuff, we hope, to be correctly configured with our path, our call sign, SSID, and the APRS frequency. Now, I'm not going to go into any of that stuff because we've already covered that previously. But what we're going to talk about today is a few other things. We're going to talk about APRS-IS, what it is, what it's for, why we care. We're going to talk about APRS services, and we're going to talk about some online APRS tools, and we'll go actually look at those live, hopefully, if everything goes well. Okay, so APRS-IS, what is APRS-IS? APRS, if you remember our initial introduction to APRS, APRS is based on packet radio, right? And interestingly enough, the internet is also based on packets, just not radio, right? So it's fairly easy to take the data that is in the packet radio packets that's associated with APRS and put that into IP packets that are actually on the internet. And so they have done this. They have set up a network of servers. They call them the APRS-IS core servers. And you can connect into those and push your APRS traffic to them and receive APRS traffic back from them. Now, since the internet is a global network, this is a global functionality. And one of the cool things about it is people will run a type of system or gateway called an iGate, or an internet gateway, that is a APRS station on RF that is also attached to the APRS-IS on the internet. So anything that station receives, it pushes onto the APRS-IS. And so if you're attached to the APRS-IS, you can see worldwide what the APRS picture is and figure out where things are and what's going on in various places. There are also bidirectional iGates where the iGate will, if a packet comes across the APRS-IS that is destined for your call sign, and it knows that it has seen your call sign on RF, it will transmit that packet out on RF, and you'll be able to receive it with your radio. So you can take advantage of these services we're going to talk about in a minute, even with an RF only setup, by taking advantage of the APRS-IS and these iGates. Sometimes you may think, gee, I don't want my data to go on the APRS-IS. My data is not relevant to somebody far away. I only care about it right here, specifically local to me. If you want that, you can put no gate or RF only in your path, and iGates will ignore it. This may be something that you want to do if you're doing a event, for example, where people outside of your local area don't need to know or care about it. That's really about the only time I can think of wanting to do that. Really, in my mind, there aren't any real good reasons for wanting to do that, but it is possible to do that if you feel like you need to. All right, so let's talk about APRS services. So these are services, it's basically software running on a computer somewhere that's attached to the APRS IS. And what it does is it watches for messages directed to it, does something with those messages, and potentially sends you back a response. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different ones. SMS gate is a gateway to SMS. You guys know what SMS is? Simple message service. It's basically your cell phone text messages. Okay. Right now, that system is offline. We'll talk about that in a minute. There's
our repeater's offline, didn't it?
no. There's a system called Email 2. There was originally a system called Email, and the guy who was running that took it down in 2019, and another guy re-implemented it in Java and brought it up again and called it Email 2. And I believe it now responds to both email and email-2. So you can try sending to email. We'll talk more about the details in a minute, but Email 2 is the active gateway. There's the Who Is service, which is also known as Who-15. Some gateways don't like a state or a call sign that looks like letters and a hyphen and then letters. They're expecting the stuff after the hyphen to be an SSID number. And so the guy who wrote the Who Is server made it also accept messages sent to Who-15. 15 looks kind of like IS. So CQ server and AN server are used for group and topic-based messaging. We'll talk about that more in detail in a minute. WXBot is a weather information robot. You can ask it for the weather in a particular place or the forecast. There's another version of that. WXBot only handles sites in the US. There's another version called WXYO that's run in Romania, and it can give you information for other places, other countries. I don't have a solid list of what they all are. There's AP Spot. So originally there was a separate bot for POTA, a separate bot for SOTA, and there weren't bots for the other things that are out there. And some guy said, we should have one bot that does all of this. And so he wrote this thing called AP Spot, and it handles SOTA. You guys know what SOTA and POTA and those things are? So SOTA is summits on the air. People will take their radios, go climb a mountaintop, get up to the top and try to make contacts. Well, if people don't know you're on top of the mountain, how are they going to know you're trying to make contacts with them? You have to be spotted on top of that mountain. And the way you do that is you post something on this website. And when you're on top of a mountain, sometimes you don't have internet access and you can't get to a website to spot yourself. But with APRS, you can spot yourself over RF from your radio, and that gets transferred out into the system. So SOTA is summits on the air. POTA is parks on the air for national parks. Does it cover state parks as well? I think it does. WWFF is worldwide flora and fauna. I don't really know anything about it. And SIOTA is another one that I hadn't heard of before, but it's silos on the air. Now, I don't know if they're talking about missile silos or if they're talking about grain silos, but it's called silos on the air. So I'm thinking, it could be just about anything, but that's the thing. We'll talk more about that in detail in a minute. And then WLKN-1 is APRS link, and the APRS or that as the WinLink gateway. So I know we've talked about WinLink before. WinLink is a tiered system. You've got your local client, you've got your RMS servers, and you've got the CMS, which is the central message server. Well, the CMS is already on the internet. And so somebody said, well, why don't we set up a gateway between the CMS and APRS so that you can access your WinLink mail and do things with your WinLink account through APRS. And so that's what WLKN-1 is. All right, we're going to talk about these in detail. right now. So SMS gate. It's a bidirectional gateway to and from SMS. That means that you could send a text message to somebody and they could reply, and that reply would come back to you via APRS on your handheld or your mobile radio or whatever. So it was kind of a cool thing. Right now, the US and Canada have added some extra laws around SMS messaging and automated SMS messaging. And the guy who runs SMS Gate has taken it offline for the time being while he figures out what can be done about that. If you check out that website, you'll find out more information about what's going on there. The way you use it is you send a message to SMS GTE, and in the message you say at the phone number you want to send the SMS to and the text of the message, and it will get sent. And then they would receive a message from a particular number, and if they reply to that, it would come back to your through APRS, come back to your call site. All right, sorry about the pops. I think my email is like blipping and blopping a lot. It should be disabled because it should be in do not disturb mode, but apparently it's not. All right, so let's talk about email. So there's email to and email. These are also for bidirectional email messages. So you can send an email from your APRS client to an email address, and there's a way for them to reply. Now, this is something that if you really want to use this, you're going to want to spend a little bit of time figuring out how this thing works, because it is convoluted. It is not trivial how this works. But if the information is on this website, if you want to go check it out. The simple model is for you to send an email message from your APRS, send an APRS message to email-2, and in the message body, the first word has got to be the email address you're sending to, and then whatever is left, it becomes the message text. Okay. We've got some more details about this. You can set up a shortcut. So you can say, by sending a message with my shortcut and user at mail server, that basically assigns the name my shortcut to that address. And then when you want to send an email to that person, you just send it to my shortcut or whatever word you choose to put there. So you could put like mom there and put your mom's email address. And then if you wanted to send an APRS message to your mom's email, you would just say mom in the place where you would normally put the username and or the email address to send to. These are just a few examples about how that works. And then if you want to find out what shortcuts you have, you're going to send a message to your own address. And you see I said me here. That's because I set up an alias for myself called me, which is my email. And then you say L, and it will send you back a list of the shortcuts that you've got. And you can delete shortcuts as well with the R command. All right. On replying, it is kind of weird. You have to have an alias set up, okay? And you have to, the person who wants to email you back, they will have received a message from you that will be from your call sign and SSID, and then something like this address here, APRS email2@ae5pl.net. AE5PL is the guy who runs this service. So they will send a message back to that address, and the subject of the email has to have your call sign and SSID and a colon and the text of the message they want to send to you. And the body of the email has to have the user ID and then the name of the shortcut that you assigned to them. So they have to know this information to be able to send you an email back. Like I said, it's kind of convoluted, and I don't know a lot of people who use that. We'll talk about another way of sending email when we get to the WinLink part. The server will hold your message for up to 24 hours. And if you sign into APRS and think, gee, I wonder if I have any email, send a message with the text get to email2. And if you have any, it will send them to you. All right. Who is or who 15? If you've ever used like qrz.com to look up a call sign, what if you're not near a computer? Well, you can look it up over APRS. So you send a message to who is or who 15, and you will get back a message with the person's name, their license class, and where they're at. If they're in the US, it'll have a state and United States. If they're in another country, it'll have the other country's name. It's kind of cool. So all you have to do is send the call sign. If you prefix the call sign with F, so you say F space and call sign, then you're going to get more of the information that's known. So it might get their full address if that's known to the system. All right, CQ server and AN server. CQ server has been around for a long time. AN server has been around for a few years. But basically, the idea here is you would send a message to CQ server with a group name, and anybody else who has sent a message with that group name will get a copy of the message that you sent. So it's a way to do like subjects, like you could set up a group for a particular subject and send message to everybody who's in that group. For example, if I send a message with CQ APRS, testing APRS services, anybody who has joined this APRS group on the CQ server will receive my message. Okay, and they can reply as well. They can reply and send messages to it, and everybody will get those too. So it's kind of like a group chat. You can unsubscribe by sending you and the group name. You can send a question mark to see all of the groups. Question mark and a specific group name will tell you how many people are in the group, and L will show what groups you're currently a member of. If you don't send anything for 12 hours, it'll unsubscribe you from the group. It's a good idea if you're doing it over RF and you're about to turn your radio off to unsubscribe from any groups, because the APRS network will continue sending messages out on your local RF to you, even when you're not there to receive them. It has no way of knowing that you've stopped receiving. You can only send one message per group every 30 minutes on CQ server.
Is there a number of character limit?
The APRS message limit, you get about, I think about 80 characters. Yeah, somewhere around there.
Typical.
It depends on what else you've got in your packet, right? So how long your path is and all of that kind of stuff. But you can count on about 80. Some devices like the old D7 will display readily 48 characters. And so messages longer than 48, you can still receive them, but they're much more painful to read. So keep that in mind. Short messages are best for this, right? Okay, so AN server is another system that was developed to overcome some perceived shortcomings in CQ server. And this was actually developed by Lynn Deffenberg, who is also the guy who wrote APRS IS32, the APRS client. And it works with tactical call signs, and it doesn't require you to send a message when you first join a group. So you can join a group without sending a message. It adds to the original commands that CQ server had. It adds D, which shows groups with descriptions, and allows you to set a description for a given group by sending D group and some additional text. It allows you to list the groups that you're a member of, which includes a count of how many people are in the group. It allows you to join a group without sending a message to it. So remember, if you say CQ group name message, you're sending a message to that group. If you just say J group, you'll join the group but not send a message, and then you'll continue to receive messages that are sent to it. And you can send K and a group. Remember, if you go over 12 hours without sending a message, you'll get booted out of the group. If you send K to a group name, it's like a keep alive. It basically says, hey, I'm still here. Don't actually send a message, but keep me on the group, right? So it allows you to do that. That's something that the original CQ server did not have. You had to actually send a message to be able to stay in the group. Okay. Last time I looked, there were 438 groups on AN server. There's a lot of groups out there. AMSAT was for APRS satellites, and I spelled satellites wrong. APRS Droid is for the APRS Droid client, Android client. Balloon is for high altitude balloons. ISS is for the ISS on ISS APRS schedule. We'll talk about that in a bit. JODA was for Jamboree on the Air, Sky Test for Skywarn, SODA for Summits on the Air. There's a lot more groups out there that only have one member in the group. So, you know, if you look on there and you see something that looks interesting, send a message to it, see what happens, see if the person responds. But remember, amateur radio is about communication, right? So we reach out, we talk to people. There's also, and today happens to be Thursday, APRS Thursdays on AN server. So if you go to this website, you'll find some information about this. But every Thursday for 24 hours, and it's actually a little bit longer than 24 hours because it starts at midnight Zulu time and it goes until like sometime the next day after. It allows, like, regardless of what time zone you're in, it lets you consider, is that still in Thursday, right? So it doesn't stop at the end of Thursday Zulu time, which would be like 6:00 p.m. our time. But the group is called Hot G. And if you send CQ Hot G to AN server and include a message, then your message will be sent to everyone on the Hot G group, and APRS PH will keep track of who all has done that and checked in on the Hot G group, right? If you're on RF, don't forget to unsubscribe from Hot G before you turn your radio off. There's an alternative way to check in without actually sending a message to Hot G, and that is to send a message to APRS PH with the text Hot G and your message, and that will not be sent out to the AN server group, but you'll still be counted as having checked in to APRS Thursday. Okay. So WXBot. It's a weather bot, gives you current or future conditions, and you can ask questions about places, times, or what kinds of things, right? So you can ask for a city or state, you can ask about a call sign, and if that call sign has been seen on APRS, it will use that call sign's position to figure out where you want the weather report from. You could ask about a latitude and longitude or a grid square. You can ask for a CWOP number. CWOP is the Citizens Weather Observation Protocol. Basically, people with weather stations at their homes submit that information to the National Weather Service, and it is gatewayed into APRS as well. You can access that based on a CWOP location. You can give it an airport identifier, either a 4-character ICAO or 3-character IATA airport identifier, and it will respond with the METAR, which is the meteorological information for airmen for that location, or you can give it a zip code. You can ask about today, tonight, tomorrow night, a specific day of the week. So if you don't say when you want it, you're basically tell me what it is right now, right? And then what you can ask for a brief weather message, a full weather report, current conditions, the METAR, or the CWOP data. This only works for areas covered by the U.S. National Weather Service and airports, which will be reported with METAR. So it will handle international airports in other countries, but it will give you the answer in METAR, not in necessarily an easily human readable form. METAR is not hard to understand once you look at it and see what it's talking about. But all right. So WXYO is like WXBot, but it's based in Romania and can look up non-US call signs. And you could ask for a report with a numeric number of hours from now, not just tomorrow or tonight, right? So instead of using the keyword tomorrow, you could say 3 hours from now or 5 hours from now or whatever. and get the forecasted weather conditions for that time. All right, AP Spot. This one was new for me. I just found out about this a couple days ago. Basically, like I say, there are systems that do individually SOTA and POTA. But this one was kind of cool because it does multiple systems. And if you go to the website here, you can get all the information about how it works. Essentially, you have to already be registered as a user on these other sites. So if you want to use this for spotting you on SOTA, you have to already be registered on the SOTA website so that it knows who you are. Same thing with POTA. And like I say, I haven't looked at this Silos on the Air yet, but is it Australian? You've heard of it? Oh, you looked it up? Okay, awesome. I was thinking it would be cool to have an airports on the air type of a thing like this, right? Where if you checked in at some local general aviation airport somewhere, that would be a place to check in from, right? But I don't think anybody's done that yet. So maybe in my copious free time, I'll start something like that. But AP Spot's actually pretty cool. It looks like it's very, very capable and able to do some interesting stuff. There is actually another gateway that is an APRS 2 SOTA gateway. And what it will do is if it notices that you are nearing a particular summit from seeing your position report that's coming from your beacon on your APRS radio, it will actually say something like, hey, you're getting close to this place. Do you want to spot that? Do you want to check in there? And you can say yes or no. So it's kind of cool. All right, so W-Link 1 or APRS link. This, like I said, it's integrated with the CMS and it allows you to read or send WinLink messages via APRS. It allows you to check and see. We'll see you, Dave. See you, Dave. Thanks for coming. It'll allow you to check if you have messages waiting on the CMS for you to pick up. It will allow you to get notified of new WinLink messages on the CMS for you via APRS. So you can actually get an APRS message saying, hey, you've got some WinLink mail you need to go look at. And it will also help you find the nearest RMS gateway. So if you're traveling somewhere, you don't know where who the nearest RMS gateway is, you don't have internet access for whatever reason, but you've got APRS, you can send a message and say, hey, where's the nearest APRS gateway? It knows your position because you beaconed your position, and it knows the positions of the APRS gateways, the RMS systems. And so it can look up and find the ones that are closest to you, and it will send you a message with the information, frequency, call sign, and protocol that you need to be able to connect to it. So pretty slick. Check this link for more information. The login process is kind of convoluted, okay? The way it works is a little weird because you have to log into WinLink, right? And in order to log into WinLink, you have to send your password. Well, you don't want to send your WinLink password in the clear over APRS where everybody can see it. So what they do is they will say to you, hey, you send a login message to WinLink. It will send a message back that says, okay, log in and a 3-digit number. And what it wants you to do is make up a password, but the 3 digits indicate which position within the password that you're going to send are the actual 3 letters from your real password. So if it sends you like 145, you've got to look at your real WinLink password and figure out, okay, the first character, 4th character, and 5th character of my actual WinLink password are significant. And then I can create whatever I want as long as the 1st, 4th, and 5th character are what your real WinLink password is. And you send that back. It's pretty horrific. There's got to be a better way to do it, but I don't know. It's what they have, what they've implemented. Dan, you had a question?
Yeah, the WLNK-1 on top.
Uh-huh.
It looked weird to me on a previous slide where you had the N and K transposed.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, so.
Oh. Well, I'll see if I can fix that before I publish the slides. Yeah, so it is kind of odd how you log into it, and your login is good for 2 hours. So if you screw up and you use the wrong password, it will give you like 3 tries, and then it will say, come back in 2 hours and try again. So I can't demo it right now because I screwed up mine more than 3 times just before coming over here. So my 2 hours haven't expired yet. But yeah, so I'm sorry, I can't demo that one. But you can send messages to it. Once you've logged in, you can send L and it will tell you how many messages you have, like some number of messages, and it will tell you like the subjects and who they're from for the first up to 5. You can read a specific message number. So you can say like R1 to read the first message that it told you about, and it will chunk it up into separate messages and send them to you. So even if it's a long message, it will chop it up into multiple APRS messages and send it to you. You can reply to a message. Y is the last letter of reply, so they chose reply since they'd already used R for read. You can send a new message by saying SP, then the address you want to send it to, and this does not have to be just a WinLink address. This can be any email address, because remember, WinLink is connected to the internet and it can send internet mail. Okay. And then the subject. And then once you've sent that, any additional messages you send are accumulated into the message body until you send it a message that contains /ex, and just /ex. And that will indicate that you are done composing that message and it will send it. So that's another way to send email with APRS without using that email gateway. You're using WinLink to do the heavy lifting. You can also create aliases where you can say a alias equals something, some email address, and then you would be able to say, for example, SP alias subject, and it would send to that person. You can delete an alias. You can get a list of all your aliases. You can forward a message to some other email address. You can delete a message on the CMS without ever downloading it. And then the cool one is if you send G, it will send you the closest RMS gateway to you. If you send like G1 or G1 is the default. If you send like G2 or G3, it will send you 2 or 3 or however many you tell it to of the next closest RMSs to you. So like I say, if you're in an area where you don't know anything, you don't know where anything is, and you don't have internet access to go look it up, you can use this to find out what the closest RMSs are to you and then try to connect to them. So sending I will give you a blip of information about APRS link. And then if you want to log off before the 2 hours are up, you can send log off. Okay. If you happen to have a Kenwood APRS radio, which it knows because the destination address in the packets is a special code that says what kind of APRS client you're using, then it will try to format the output for your device. So this is where that on that D7 where you're stuck with 48 characters, it will try to format the message to fit into 48 character chunks so that you can see that message easily on the D7. It only, as far as I know, knows about Kenwood radios. I don't think it knows about any Yaesu or any Tone or any of the other types, but it's kind of cool. And I mentioned before that if you receive a WinLink message, it can send you an APRS message. And if you wanted to do that, you just have to put the keyword WinLink in your beacon comment. And then when your APRS device beacons, it sends your position report into the system. APRS WinLink will notice that WinLink keyword on there, and add you to a list of people to notify when you get a WinLink message. So that's kind of cool.
Just a point of, just a comment, anybody who's been into packet radio for any amount of time, you'll notice that there's a lot of special commands that you give it to do something. When we do the Wasatch 100 or, Utah SAG events that we use packet radio, we get into the packet and there's a good 24, 30 commands that you could use to do different things, right?
Right.
So if you're, this is very typical to packet.
Oh,
implementation.
the single letter
Yeah,
commands. Yeah. Yeah.
Or not necessarily single, the VF pound.
Right.
A lot of different things.
Yeah.
It's packet-esque.
Yeah. And again, WinLink's been around for a long time. APRS has been around since the 80s. Really since GPS really started coming into its own. And of course, packet radio has been around since the 80s. So, these are all concepts and ideas that people came up with years ago that still work today, even though it's, 2024 now, right? So almost 2025. Can you believe that? For the recordings purposes, Dan was just saying that if you do anything with packet radio, for example, some events will use packet radio for sending information around. You'll notice that they use these kind of abbreviated commands for all kinds of packet radio stuff. So if you're familiar with packet radio, you may be more familiar with these kinds of commands. So it's a valid point. All right, let's talk about some more advanced APRS stuff. APRS, we talked briefly about APRS objects and items before, and when we normally are working with APRS, we're going to be an APRS station, okay? And a station has a call sign, a SSID, it has a symbol, and it typically has a position. It doesn't necessarily have to have a position, but it typically has a position. Objects are just like a station. It's something that you can create and put on the map. And when you put that object on the map, that information will get sent out on APRS and it will appear on other people's maps at that location. Okay. It's just like a station, except that it doesn't have a call sign and a SSID. It just has a name. Okay. You put that on the map, you can move it. You can actually set it up so that an object is already moving. So you can give it a direction and speed and it will move on the map automatically for you. It might represent a person, it might represent a station, it might represent something like a storm. It might represent a physical object like a fire truck or, something that is able to move, something that's able to do something, and potentially something that is ephemeral that will go away when it's no longer important, right? Items are,
like recently.
go ahead.
Like recently, if you looked at APRS in Florida, it kept track of the hurricanes. And of course, it had all the WinLink up and ready. And before this hurricane hit, they had all these fire stations up. So people would have a location to go to for what's that called? For sheltering in place. So it's kind of interesting to watch that.
Yeah, so those are basically objects that people can put out there. Now, objects and items can be, they're not really owned by a person. They're created by a particular call sign, but another call sign could post the same object and now it's their object, right? An object can also be killed or deleted. When you do that, it doesn't actually go away. It just puts the object into a killed status. And so it generally won't show up on the map. But if your client gives you a list of objects that it knows, it would still show up in that list and just be tagged as a killed object. Okay. The difference between items and objects are items don't actually have an expiration. So there are things that are expected to be around for a long time, like a a hospital location would be a good thing to put for an item, or a repeater with its frequency and tone and other information about it would be a good thing to put in as an item, not as an object. Okay. It's not likely to move and it's not likely to go away. So the actual message that you send does have a timestamp, but you send this special 111111 Zulu timestamp attached to it, and that's what makes it an item. Okay. They don't really have an owner. They can be moved or killed by anybody. So one of the cool things that I saw years ago when I first started playing with APRS, somebody had laid out a chessboard out in the middle of the ocean somewhere with objects, and each chess piece was an object. And so you could kill, or you could take an object and move it to another square and play a game of chess on APRS with somebody. Kind of a cool idea. It was an interesting thing. I don't know that anybody's still doing anything like that, but it was just another kind of cool thing. There also area objects are supported, so you can define either a line or a polygon. So for something like a race, you could define the race course with APRS objects, and they would appear on the map and show you where the race course actually is on the map. Also, you would put objects like the way stations, aid stations, water stops, anything like that that might be as part of the race. You could put those on as objects as well. Another thing that people would do sometimes is they would put an object for like the lead runner or the what do they call it, the sweep vehicle on the map, so you could always tell where they are on the map and where they are in the course. Very good information. The implementation of objects is dependent on the client that you're using. So I'm not going to go into specifics on how you create an object and how you move an object and things like that. That's something you would find in the help files for the particular client that you're using. There are ways to manually send objects by crafting your message accordingly. I'm not going to go into that either. If you're interested in that, the information is available online. There's also APRS satellites out there. So several satellites have been launched that have APRS gateways on them, including the ISS, interestingly enough. This QO100, we don't really care about that because it's actually in geosynchronous orbit over Europe. And so we'll never see it from here. But it's actually a very capable satellite and has a lot of cool things built into it. But one of them is an APRS gateway. The ISS is always out there until they deorbit it in what, 5 years, 6 years? I don't remember when they said they're planning to bring it down. Hopefully we have something to replace it with before we take it down. So we'll see what happens there. What's that? Yeah, right. That's typical. Yeah. I wish they would just boost it up to a higher altitude and leave it to see, as an unsupported station in space, to see what happens with long-term effects of an unsupported object in space, right? But they probably won't do that. They'll probably just deorbit it. It's been suggested. In fact, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson suggested it to NASA.
I
So
propose that they send Kamala there.
Yeah, she can report back.
maybe we could send both Kamala and Trump up there. That would be
Better
good.
idea.
Yeah, that's not a bad
Put
idea.
them in the same space capital. Fighting with each other.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves. No, that was Thunderdome, right? And okay, anyway. So if you want to do APRS in space, you're going to set your path to ARISS, and you're going to use this frequency 145.825 megahertz for your APRS transmissions. The cool thing about this is no matter where you are on the planet, an APRS satellite will probably pass over you at least once every 60 minutes. So if you've got a Yagi antenna and you know where the satellite's going to be and when it's going to be there, chances are really good that you will be able to get a message out no matter where you happen to be. So that's kind of an interesting thing about APRS in space.
But with satellites, I mean, last time I talked to the astronauts on the ISS space station, I had to change the frequency because of the compression and stuff.
Keep in mind, APRS, the packets are short, right?
Okay, but 145.825.
Yeah, you-
How do you know?
A-
Because it's
Again,
pointing at it, it's coming at you, it's gonna be 820, you know,
all I'm telling you is that it works.
okay,
So I don't know all the physics behind it or the details of that.
okay.
We could probably look that up, but it's probably out of scope for this meeting. All right, so that's where my presentation ends. But what I wanted to do is actually pull up. There's a couple of websites that are kind of related to APRS, and we've talked about APRS.5 before. Okay, if you guys remember seeing this. And this is a picture of where we are right here. Oh, look, there's Ragnar. He's beaconing N7 LCR-7. And then right here is my phone. You can see the little phone icon. I have APRS Droid running on my phone right now. But you'll see some other things on here too. You see a lot of these WXs. Those are the CWOP stations. And you'll notice they have names like CW8826 and EW9449. Those are basically just the CWOP designations for them. But if you look at one of these, you can see he's reporting a temperature of 72, humidity of 19%, pressure of 1018.8 millibars, wind at 0.9 miles per hour at 338 degrees with gusts up to 2 miles per hour. No rain in the last 24 hours, no rain since midnight. And that's his weather report. Here's another one. Here's one over here on the west side. 71 degrees on the west side, 72 on the east side. This is just a thing that people do. They put their home weather site up on the CWOP. And again,
Your phone droid
what about it?
location.
It's right here. That's a fire station. So you can see basically my altitude is being reported as 4,052 feet. Presumably that's above sea level. So I do have a filter set up for APRS only that gets rid of all of those weather stations, but you'll see some other stuff on here. Here's some guy's truck. You'll see some digipeaters like KF6RAL-2 is a digipeater. So when you look at, like, if I look at this guy's truck, you can see this line up here, and that's saying that his beacon was received by this digipeater. And this digipeater's beacon was received, let's zoom out a little, by something way up there, by this eye gate here, KB7COX-10. And then it was received actually by this guy out here in Grantsville, or also received this guy out here in Grantsville. So, but you can kind of get a picture of what's going on in the given area. Now, I don't see, oh, you also see this kind of line here that's like cyan colored. That's somebody's track. And you're seeing each one of these little dots is one of his beacons as he was driving down the freeway. And that's this guy right here. So that's kind of interesting. But again, remember, APRS is not just about positions and tracking vehicles. It's about tactical information that's important to you. And you can see these W's are WinLink gateways. And if I look at one of these, it says this one is a VAR FM wide gateway on 431.070. So if I am close enough to reach him, I can try hitting him with my WinLink client. This guy over here is the Crossroads one. It's a VARA FM wide gateway on 145.050 on 2 meters. And here's one that is a VARA on 145.050. I don't see one that is packet. Maybe this guy. This guy is a packet gateway on 145.050. Okay. So you can get this kind of visual picture of where the WinLink gateways are. Out here, you can see this little radio tower. This is a repeater, 449.25. The reason it says HRM on the end here is because remember, objects are global in APRS. And if I was to post a 449.25 object and there already was one somewhere else, that one would go away and it would move to the one that I posted. So you always want to post it with some kind of random code on the end of it that's not already existing somewhere. But if I click on this guy, I can see he's at 449.25. He's got a tone of 118, a -5 megahertz offset, and there's a net on Sundays at 9 p.m. And this is the call sign or the website. I can go look up more information about that. So when we get our repeater back online, I want to post an object for our repeater that includes information about our weekly net and probably something about our club meeting as well.
And what software is this you're using?
This is APRS.fi. It's run by a guy named Hesu, who is in Finland, and it's basically tied into the APRS IS, and so it receives all of the data that comes in over the APRS IS, and you can visualize it anywhere in the world, basically. So as I zoom this out, you can see where there's APRS traffic happening. There's quite a bit up here in Cache Valley.
Carolina.
You want to go to Florida instead, where the hurricane is right now?
Yeah, anywhere.
So this is kind of, when you zoom out far enough, you get this heat map. And so the redder the color, the more activity there is. So if we zoom in here on Florida, let's see what we get. There's quite a bit of activity going on over here. And again, remember, I've turned off the weather stations, so we're not seeing the CWLP stations. We're just seeing APRS traffic. These hospital objects, all these H's, that's what Ragnar was talking about, right? So if we, let's zoom in a little bit closer here and see what's going on over there. Look at all that swamp. Yeah, so here's Baptist West, Kendall RG, Jackson S, Mercy, Jackson, Mount Sinai, all the different hospitals. There's an EOC here. And then you see also there's a WinLink gateway there and one there. There's a digipeater here. There's a gateway here. But you can get a picture of what's going on. There's a boat, a canoe, it looks like.
Well, that was in the ocean, now it's.
Yeah, right. Dude,
Got pushed in like.
there's a
Just so
ship.
everybody knows, I talked to Rick, last few days.
Yeah, because he was moving to Florida, wasn't he? Or North Carolina.
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
He's in North Carolina. He's been helping out with the ham radio communications. Getting messages in and out of
Good.
areas.
Then I assume he's all right.
Yeah.
If we go up here to North Carolina. No, I think that went too far. South
Yeah,
Carolina,
there's Fayetteville,
North
there's
Carolina.
Jacksonville.
Again, you can see there's a lot going on out here.
Can you do a search for AI3W?
I can. So there's an AI3W-9, which is his vehicle, AI3W-1, which is his QTH. And then there's an AI3W-N, which looks like his hotspot. There's a B, which is a D star and another D star, and then another hotspot here. The oldest one, youngest one is this hotspot on 70 centimeters.
Yeah, click on it, let's see, does it take you to the,
I can just click on it like that. It'll jump me to it.
there you go. Look, it is altitude.
Yeah, 0 feet.
This is why they're having problems.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And that's why you get flooding. At least it's not negative yet.
Right? Yeah,
Or the phone is floating on the water.
in North Carolina.
I mean, let's put some D-Star things there. D-Star has kind of a positioning tool, but it's not the same as.
So D-Star has DRPS, which is actually gatewayed into the APRS IS. So you can send messages to a D-Star radio through APRS and vice versa. There's also a lot of the DMR radios will have APRS functionality built into them. Some of them will do it digitally over the DMR system. Some of them will do it over RF. The newer ones have the RF functionality. Like my Anytone 878 does it digitally, but it doesn't do it on RF. So I don't think there's anything similar to that for Yaesu. Yaesu does have a bunch of APRS radios, but they don't have any kind of gateway thing built into them, into the Yaesu System Fusion.
You were talking about emails. I was thinking, well, seems like WinLink is a lot better system for email. but
Yes.
The density of APRS is far.
Oh, yes. Yes. APRS is definitely wider used. Okay, so the other one I wanted to look at is called Find You. And so, sorry, did you need?
I was just taking a picture for Rick. Let him know that we're. Okay, hold on, we're spying on.
We're spying on it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so Find You is another system that monitors the APRS IS, and it actually provides a bunch of API endpoints that you can use to acquire APRS information without having to run your own listener on the APRS IS. So, for example, if I click on this, here's a list of all of the different endpoints that I can get. So I can look at a barometric graph, for example, and this tells about how this endpoint works, baro.cgi, and I can give it things like the call sign, and it will try to give me a barometric chart of that, where that call sign is. So let's try it and see what happens. If I can get my thing to let me type in here. Oh, thanks a lot. Let's go back. Okay. Come on. What the heck? So if I put in CGI bin / baro.cgi question mark call equal ED7ZWV. Nope. I have to say -1 or something like that. Oop. How do I get back there? Come on. What the heck is going on with this thing? Let me move this out of the way. Maybe that's the problem. This is -5. Apparently I'm not reporting any pressure information, so it can't get that for me. But there's a ton of different CGIs out here or API endpoints that you can hit that will give you information. One of the things that it also has on Find You is pcsat.findyou.com. Will give you information about any satellite APRS activity that it's heard. And so you can see this is like the last, since 0600. I think this is the Zulu time. And it looks like this is the earliest. So it's like 24 hours worth here or something like that, or 12 hours. But you can see what traffic has actually gone through the satellites, the APRS-IS or ARISS system, which is kind of cool. So Find You, if you go to the website, you'll see that it kind of has a 90s look and feel. It probably was developed in the 90s by some guy who is like me. So a lot of stuff doesn't look great, but the data is all good, right? So it's kind of cool. I know that like APRS.fi has like 2 terabytes of archived APRS traffic, which goes back some number of months. So, and it's got it all in a GIS database. So it's kind of cool. All right, and we've passed 8 o'clock, I think. And I've got to get to the pharmacy before they close. So I'm gonna have to wrap it up here. Let me stop the recording.
We got time to work on